Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Dealer Insights podcast, where we go under the hood, bumper to bumper, and just about everywhere in between, discussing topics important to dealers of all types and sizes. Your time is valuable, so thanks for riding along for this episode of Dealer Insights.
Welcome back to Dealer Insights. It's Vinny and Sean. I've got a great episode today. We're always talking about BDC and we're talking about the sales process inside the dealership. And we've ventured into kind of cracking the seal a little bit on AI recently. We're going to come back to that in some future episodes. But today for the audience, we are really we're really looking at the importance of your employees. And we're going to talk a lot about turnover. And of course, you think you know, but there's been some changes in the last few years. We've got some research points and topics, but I want to kind of frame this episode for everybody tuning in. Like, think about the expectations of the car buyer, right? The car buyer still has expectations no matter what's happening with our economy or inflation or fuel costs. If you're in the market to buy a car, you still have expectations. And if you're the dealer, you have to be mindful of that, right? We live in a world that's complete instant gratification. And there's a lot of other industries that make it a challenge even for car dealers to keep up with it. Imagine if you need food or medicine. Last night, our daughter, who is on her own, lives on her own over in Dallas, she needed like some medicine. And we literally got on our app on our phone at 11:30 at night and had a couple of things delivered to her door. That's a real life story, but an example of how the expectations of consumers keep going up. And if you don't have reliable salespeople, if you're also using a BDC as part of your sales process, you're going to struggle. And so that's what I really was excited about this episode, is kind of getting into a little bit about even just the basics. Are you answering the phone? How are you answering the phone? How are you responding to all the different ways that people communicate with you? So, before I get into some of the specific questions, let me just get your general, kind of feelings about that, Vinny. Because it's still a problem. In any reason why you think, or is it multiple reasons, and that's why we'll get into it and uncover all of it in this episode?
Yeah, turnover is a core problem in the industry, and it has been for a long, long time. Retail in general, just to let the car dealers off the hook a bit, retail in general tends to have high turnover. The restaurant industry tends to have high turnover. Call centers tend to. One of the reasons, I think, one of the biggest reasons is flexibility scheduling. When you're in the car industry, you got to stay open to 12 hours a day. Restaurants are open till late at night. They're busy on weekends. So if you want to work in the restaurant industry, all your friends and family are off on the weekends, and you're working. Not too much different than the car industry. Turnover is a core issue, and it's difficult to solve because of the amount of hours that you're open in a week. I believe a car dealer is open 172 hours in a week, and those hours need to be covered. Because a customer is first, right? And so if you're not open, or you're open and you don't have anyone to help a customer when they show up, that's not a great customer experience. But to your point about technology, technology has definitely helped. I was actually at NADA in Dallas, and I ordered all kinds of groceries for the suite we got, and they deliver them right to my door. It was pretty cool. I am that guy, by the way. I use technology. I hate going into stores. I hate going to the car dealerships.
Our expectations, right? All the stuff we have at our fingertips now, it kind of makes us spoiled a little bit. At least from you and I are kind of old school. We
100%
know what it was like without all this stuff.
Yeah, we're old school. What's interesting about old school is that I also knew back then what was wrong with turnover. And it just hasn't changed much. Although, not to toot our own horn, it changed at Strolid, and it changed when I was with a big dealer group when I ran a centralized BDC for the whole East Coast. We looked at it a little differently than your average car dealership does. We looked at the flexibility of people's time, right? I mean, when I started in the car business, my friends thought I was crazy working 60 hours a week. What are you doing? But I was making more money than all of them at the time. So that was the trade-off. But, waking up as a early 20-year-old, having to get up after being out all night Friday night and spend the whole day, talking to customers, it was hard. And then, most Sundays or every other Sunday, like if you work Sundays in New England, you can be open on Sunday. Some states they're closed. I think that's smart to force companies to close on Sunday. But obviously you can't, those are laws that you can't help it to want to be open if customers are off on Sunday. So obviously it's just a tricky business in that regard. However, we started having our BDC people work 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
A long time ago, like 15, 20 years ago. I think I told you the story. I hired a kid who used to work for me. He came back to work for me, and he's like complaining that he's not making as much money as he was at the other dealership. And I was like, okay, do you have a training team that helps you train? Do you have a management team that helps you with tough customers or TO and deals? Do you have, a follow-up team that does long-term follow-up for you? How many hours did you work there? And he was like, well, probably 50, 55 hours a week. I'm like, well, if you do the math, you're making the same amount of money for me, but you're only working 40. And we're pretty strict. I never, ever bother anybody on their day off or time off. I never ask them to work more than 40 hours a week. Now, we will put it out there that we're giving away overtime and people will volunteer for it if we run into those situations, but we never make it mandatory. I mean, some of those are medieval kind of thoughts that still go on in the industry, They just work them. I mean, in the Northeast, right, car salesmen have to come in when there's a snowstorm.
Yeah.
On their day off.
That's brutal.
And clear cars. And I've seen guys quit over that. And
I think
I
that
can't
would
blame
make me
them.
want to quit.
They're like, nope.
Speaking of some of your employees, and I got a question I want to ask you. I noticed, just for the audience, on Facebook, one of the Strolid Facebook posts, I think it's one of your video cuts on a particular topic. Somebody that worked for you in years past jumped on there and she wrote this raving compliment about your dedication to this part of the industry and this part of retail, and how you have so many years of experience that, you're going to rule the world one day, kind of thing. It's very flattering. But she also spoke very highly of, her fellow Strolidites, if that's what you call your crew. It was a pretty cool post, and it kind of speaks to, I think, what a lot of them, once they realize the methodology and all the things that are in place, it helps the dealers so much, but it's also really good for people that are looking for a job that has structure, that does also teach them and train them. Like, there's a whole bunch of kind of what you guys do that I think a lot of people don't really know. But I want to kind of come back and position this question, because dealers out there that listen to this type of content, this podcast, some of them might be thinking like, well, okay, so what have I done wrong, and what should I be looking for when I'm hiring BDC personnel, or maybe even salespeople? Because there's some crossover there. There's some relation in those roles. So these days, when those people need to kind of be a little bit or somewhat technical, what are some of the things that dealers should be looking for to hire the right sales or BDC person in today's environment?
All right. Well, Sean, I've told you this before. Sometimes my answers aren't very sexy. But, there's a fundamental to life. There's a fundamental to work. There's a fundamental to management. There's a fundamental to running an operation. There's fundamentals, I should say. And traditionally why BDCs fail or struggle or fall apart is due to poor management. So how I would answer that is, you really need to define the role that you're looking for. What outcomes are you looking for from this role? And really define the expectations that you want to set for that employee. So like I told you, 40 hours a week. If that's an expectation that I'm setting, then I need to stick to that, or I'm going to create animosity. And the employee is going to get upset if I start asking them to work 45, 50 hours a week. We don't put ourselves in that position. When we started as a new company, and this is why I feel sorry for a lot of the newer BDCs that are coming up through they're popping up here and there, that they're going to go through a lot of what we've already been through. Because once you get to a certain size, now you have a little bit more structure around your business. So now we have a training team, right? We have a recruiter. We have an HR person who used to be the trainer, recruiter, and HR person when we first started, We have directors on the BDC side that oversee the operations. Then we have Shauna, who oversees all the operations. But then we have directors on the client success side. And, early on, our directors would handle both the dealers and the BDC people. And that was hard, But again, now that we've grown, we've got more structure around what we do, and we have really, really good people. So there it is, right? Strolid has some very long tenured people. Why? Why is that? We're no different than what a dealer's trying to do internally. They build it in BDC, whatever. We have people that stay with us, and so I think that's a question that you're asking, but. Obviously, a leader needs to care more about their people than they do about themselves. Just like a father or a mother, like in a way. I don't mean to make it sound like all these people are my kids, but like everything I do centers around 3 objectives. Our business is built around employee satisfaction and retention, dealer satisfaction and retention, and profit. And those are the 3 things I focus on. Is every employee happy with us? Is every dealer happy with us? No. If you're looking for perfection, then don't start a business. Yeah. I can promise you that. Become a mathematician, because math is what it is, right? There's no subjectivity to math. Or be an engineer or something like that. But with running a business, you're dealing with different personalities, different people. So we just try to be as consistent as we possibly can with our expectations that we set for our people. We show them career paths. We promote the right people. We don't promote people just because they've been with us a long time, for example. No, we promote people that do things based on what our expectations are for that job. And so we set it very, we can go through our training, but our training is very thorough. We don't hire people and train them to be nice. We hire nice people. Once you have that accomplished, now you can ask those nice people to do what you're asking them to do, as long as you're not being unreasonable.
Have you found that through COVID, and I don't know what stage we're at, I feel like we're through COVID. I guess my point is, so we've all you've learned a tremendous amount in the type of service that you provide to dealers in the last 3 years. So here's my question around that. Do you think that the last 3 years has made any significant change to whether or not a good candidate has experience in the car business, or is it more important for them to have some experience in just providing good service to a customer, almost regardless of industry? Because I have the luxury of knowing that you guys do have a very stout training program. And so you can take somebody that's just, hey, they got a smile and they've got a good attitude, and you can teach them what you need them to know. But through COVID, do you think that's changed a little bit, or for you guys specifically, is it a doable thing to take somebody that doesn't have a lot of, or maybe any sales experience inside of a car dealership, but turn them into somebody who's really effective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the car dealership experience is a double-edged sword, right? It can help you and it can hurt you. We definitely like to see some experience. Car experience is a plus. However, they have to be able to empty the glass when they come to work for us, so we can fill it with our information. Is that just because they know, the ins and outs of the car business doesn't mean they really understand how we
might have been
business.
taught bad habits.
It goes back to expectations. We're very clear when we hire somebody. Here's what we're going to be expecting you to do. You're going to go through. I know you have experience, but you're going to go through a 2-week training program. I know you're going to have some different thoughts on how things should be done. Mm-hmm. This is how we do it, and we expect you to follow. Is that okay with you? I don't, it's just like talking to a dealer that wants to sign up with us. If they start asking us to do like ridiculous things and they just don't seem like a good fit for us, we'll tell them, we don't think you're a good fit for us. And we tell an employee, we don't think you're a good fit for us. Here's the key to that though, Sean. When it comes to an employee setting expectations early, this is what you can expect from working for us. Here's some people, here's some opportunities, here's where the job can go. Now we have IT opportunities, we have dev opportunities, we have marketing opportunities, we have training opportunities, we have client success opportunities, sales opportunities, BDC, management opportunities. Whereas when we first started, it was all BDC, right? Now, again, that's kind of where the structure comes in when we talk about a career path for our people. But when they come in, as long as they're conscientious and compliant and they follow along to the best of their ability, they'll get ahead with us. It's like my old mentor used to say, prisons are filled with people who did things their own way. I love that saying because it's true. And I tell my people all the time, if you do it my way and it doesn't work, you can blame me.
Yeah. Very, very true.
If you do it your own way and it doesn't work, then I'm going to blame you.
Do you think there are some common attributes of people that you've brought in to work on your team that are among your most successful, or the ones that reach higher levels that you promote faster, that you see in people really quickly? Are there certain characteristics of those people?
Yeah, there are. We do, thanks to you, we have a nice little personality profile that we can hone in on when we do our part of our hiring is for people to take the personality profiling. And it's the otter, right? Well, you define the otter. You can probably define it better than me. But
otters are,
that person tends to work out better for us, right? I am more of a lion. I've said this before. It would be hard. It was always hard for me to do a job like a BDC agent. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. I just, I'm like a caged animal. I can't just sit there and process. I can't. Some people love doing that. The challenge is, Sean, when you ask, did you want BDC experience or automotive experience, or do you want customer service experience? My answer really is yes. I want both. Getting both is hard, right? Sometimes they have, better tendencies to be better customer service wise, but they struggle with asking for the appointment or the sale, right? Some people get too over aggressive. They skip all the important steps of building a relationship and they want to go right for the sale. So, we do a really good job of training. We talked about scripting on one of our last episodes. I think it was 2 episodes ago, and how people train on the script and blah, it sounds canned. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I guess I could swear. But bullshit. It's a fundamental, it's a structure. It's a process. You start with a meet and greet. Then you need to listen to the customer, active listening. And you want to repeat things back that they said to make sure you're on the same page. And that helps build rapport. you really need to give here's something we can talk about briefly, though. Like, some dealers are still over sticker on cars. And I've been having a little argument with Josh about it. Like, we need to talk to them because they're telling us, oh, these cars don't quote a price, just get them in.
Yeah.
But you're over sticker on it. We can do that.
I've been seeing that myself.
However, if you're going to tell them in the showroom, what's the difference of telling them in the showroom or if I tell them when they call me? Well, we don't want a competition to drop, 500 and we'll lose a deal. Okay, then drop it 500. Like, this is a market. This is competitive. Let's shop your competition. Let's figure out what the heck's going on out there right now before we start playing games like we were back in the 80s and 90s, just because inventory is still scarce in some cases. No, like, we got to treat customers and employees like, it's funny. I always turn it around to a dealer, especially when they're good friends of mine. How would you handle the customer if they asked you for a price?
Good question.
You're the GM,
It's a great question.
What would you say?
I think.
But I battle like that. My people see me battle with my dealers over stuff like that because they know I care about them. And when I see them having it tough, I can empathize with that. That's what a good leader should do, in my opinion, is like, don't just say, oh, it is what it is, and do what you're told.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. If it's really painful for them to handle that, you're going to lose people if you continue to put them through that.
See,
kind of pain.
you're like talking through even understanding these dynamics. Well, because you do understand the dynamics of people. You reference the otter and the kind of, that's just the fastest way I've ever figured out how to understand the types of people. Yeah. But what you're talking about is those interpersonal communication skills of just knowing, like, you're not going to push people to the limit, kind of know what you're dealing with. That's why when you say you're more lion, and for people that have not ever heard of a personality test that identifies through these animals, is there's a lion, there's an otter, there's a golden retriever, and there's a beaver. And each of those animals have these different traits. And you basically go through the questionnaire and you are honest with yourself about understanding, well, which are and then once you know this is who I am, then you learn what the other animals' traits are as well. And then you also learn all these communication skills. And what you're talking about right there, I think, is such a critical piece of not just who should we be looking for to hire, what seats are they in on the team, and what role do they play, but then also how do you communicate and get the best out of people. And everything that you're sharing there, I think, is really important. I think people for this particular episode need to hear that, because I think there's a lot of people that ask the question. One, they start with, well, what type of people do I need to find? But then beyond that, they don't really know where to go.
Well, Sean, I want to just jump in here real quick because I'm the CEO of the company, right? So I can't focus on the little details that Shauna and Derek and Anthony focus on every day, or that Josh and Gus and Edwin and Kayla and Will focus on every day, or even now Rob focusing on sales, right? But that's why when we brought in the OKR system from Intel, right? Objectives and key results is what it stands for. When we set the objective, this is one thing you can always count on me for, Sean. Once you tell me this is the plan, I'm going to figure out how to get it. So my plan was employee satisfaction. I know everybody says that. Dealer satisfaction and profit. Those are the three things I need to focus on as a CEO at a high level. When I start looking at why are we not performing well at this store at a high level, and then I can't get the answers, I go to my people and ask them. And they tell me. And then you're like, like we have a Cadillac dealer. I won't name the name of my dealer, but there's so much pressure on their mystery shops. Their mystery shops are outrageous that I found out recently this week that everybody in that group's afraid to take a call for that store.
Oh, no. That's not good.
Yeah. No, it's not.
That's not good.
And so when, if you're not really honest with your people, or you're not letting them give you real feedback, some people might blow it off and say, oh, that's not important. Well, to them it is. And as long as they like, I may not solve their problem, but as long as they know I give a shit and I'm listening, and then I'm going to put an effort into fixing whatever it is to make their life easier here at the company, then they want to stay. I give them career paths. I give them, opportunities to work from home now, which is a huge one. I have a lot of people tell me, "Oh, that won't last." Well, I think they're dead wrong. We can talk about that if you want, Sean. But the work from home thing is very interesting because I'm old school like you. And when COVID hit, we sent people home. And it scared. I thought we were going out of business.
Yeah, I remember that. You weren't the only one, and I think this is a good way to segue into. Let's talk about this a little bit, and as it relates to your recruiting process, because you mentioned this a few minutes back, where you've got a recruiter, but you didn't always have a recruiter, right? And I know that this is one of those places where dealers, I think even companies that compete with you, they struggle with, okay, where are we going to find the people? And they're all trying to work, Indeed or whatever. But I think it's pretty significant that you at some point in time decided this is how we need to completely rebuild our recruiting process, which included putting a position like that in place. But I think it's smart as hell. So talk a little bit about that recruiting process, and then also how it related to this new COVID kind of consideration of being able to hire people, train people, and then have effective people that are remote as well. Because those are big items for people to figure out.
Yeah. So we built the CXM 6 years ago. CXM stands for Customer Experience Management System. So all the leads from all of our dealers come to our system as well as the CRM. So we're able to answer a call rapidly, which is a key to our business. So that was a big piece, to be able to let people work from remotely, to make sure that the leads are getting answered quickly and responded to appropriately. We put in a new phone system in January of that year. Thank God we did, because that phone system gave us the ability to monitor our people. We've since built on top of that phone system for even better reporting. Like, we have a dashboard that shows agent productivity. We have a dashboard that shows basically a call log, in and outbound calls that they took, if they missed any calls, which, we're down to under 5% missed, which is, when I was at that big dealer group running the call center, we couldn't get it under 10% missed calls. Because sometimes a missed call is just a customer hanging up because they got another call or they hit a bad cell spot or something.
Not sitting there and ringing
it's not
20
always
times and right.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have this flash dashboard that we built that basically allows us to look at a queue and say everybody's on the call. So if I'm a manager, I pick up the phone if a call comes in, or if a call's ringing to somebody and they're not answering it, we can Slack them right there. We're all on Slack, and we can pick up the call or reroute it. But like, why aren't you picking up the call? You know what I'm saying? So we have when everybody was in the office, they could be over in the corner not doing anything, and you would never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now we have dashboards for phone in and outbound. We have lead dashboards. We're actually, with some of the tech we're building, as we talked about on the last episode, we're going to be able to transcribe these calls, push the summarization of the call after it's been transcribed into the CRM, which is going to save my people time from typing, stuff like that. Like, the tech side, we're getting really, really, really involved. So, but when we first started sending people home, I was scared, and then I was like, what's going to happen next? Well, as throughout history, as humans prove, they step up when things get tough, and our people stepped up. And the dealers were a mess for the first month as well. So as we were getting our shit together, trying to figure it all out, they were all up in arms. No one was in the showrooms anyway, but we were still answering leads, and they were grateful. But what I found within the first 60 days is, wow, this is working. Not only is it working, but people were happier. A lot of my people, we'd have lots of conversations, and they didn't want to come back in the office. So my mantra was, as long as we continue to produce really good results, you don't have to come back in the office. Well, funny thing happened. This is probably June, July, where I started realizing, hey, this is actually not so bad. And it's a benefit to our
2020, people. June, July.
As long as I can get the outcomes and what I expect, as long as I can get that and I can get the outcomes that I want, I don't care where they do it from.
And that was June, or June or July of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we still had this old school mentality that we had to bring people in and train them when we hired people. So one day we had a new hire class of about 5 people. And I walked by the training class and they were all sitting in there and I heard Michael's voice and I'm like, Michael's not here. So I walk in the room and Michael's doing a web meeting, a Google Meet from home while they were all sitting in the room training. And I remember laughing to myself going, well, if he doesn't have to be here, why do they have to be here? That was July. August, we had this epiphany like, let's try and hire people nationwide. So I put an ad out, remote BDC, Automotive BDC Plus, customer service experience a must. We got 650 applications in a matter of like 5 or 6 hours. It was amazing. I had to shut the ad off. And I'm like, what did I just tap into? And then we sat around like, how are we going to manage all of this? Yeah. So we sat in a room, we talked about it, and we put this email together. We sent an email to all 650, basically asking 5 questions. Now, maybe 250, 300 of those 650 respond to those questions. Now we send them a phone number and a script, and we say, call this phone number and leave a voicemail and ask a couple more questions, have them take screenshots of their computer so we can see how much power their computer has, their internet, blah, blah, blah. We do a whole bunch of different steps now, but now we got it down to 50 people. Of that 50 people, now these are all very compliant people at this point. They just went through 2 or 3 steps with us. We hired 10 of the best. I had a dealer in Alabama ask me, like, well, we had a customer complain about the accent. How would you like it if I hired someone from Alabama for you? They're like, you would do that? I'm like, sure. Why not? Nick, get an ad out in Alabama. We hired 2 people from Alabama.
They were complaining about the Bostonian accent.
I don't know. I mean, what's funny is like we have dealers in Miami or in LA. They want Spanish speaking folks. Yeah. But then when those Spanish speaking folks talk to people in Alabama, they don't. I know. It's not just the Boston
I kind of kid about it because guys like you and I have been in the industry for a long time. I mean, we're not spring chickens. I have heard this kind of thing come up before, but it's the accent. But you know what? If you say that around like the wrong people, you call all kinds of nasty names, but it has nothing to do with having nasty names. It literally is just a thing. Like there are people in the South, definitely in Alabama, who they probably are like, man, unless you sound like you're from Alabama, maybe Mississippi, or parts of Louisiana or something.
I think the dealer's wrong, by the way, because the CEO of the big dealer group I work for once asked me, he's like, how do the people down south deal with your Bostonian accents? And I said to him, I said, they actually prefer talking to people down south. And he's like, really? Why is that? And I said, because they're nice.
Yeah.
The people in New York and Boston, they freaking can be rude and they're lions, some of them.
Even the ones that are golden retrievers, they're like.
Even in the people down south, that even when they're mad, they're nice to you.
Bless your heart.
It's a different culture. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't get hung up on any of that. At the end of the day, I want to make sure I have a good person working there. I don't give a crap what their accent's like or where they're from. As long as they work hard and
I think that's
they care
important.
about customers.
Well, you touched on something here just in the last few minutes that I don't know, because I think we could literally do a whole podcast about it. Although I don't know that I want to, teach the entire industry exactly Strolid's training methodology, but I know you can speak to a little bit about it and maybe give us, somewhat of a concise version of like, so how do you train them? I mean, you stumbled upon this, you've got a trainer who's phoning into a room of people that are having to sit there. And then you're like, hey, light bulb comes on. Everybody can be Ramon.
But speaking of accents, Lulu, who's not only my head trainer, but she's also like family to me. And she's also a founder, really, because it was her and Shauna that I pulled aside one day and said, hey, I want to start a business. And they both quit their jobs to come work with me. But Lulu's from the Dominican Republic, and her English is very broken. But let me tell you something. You don't want anyone on your team ahead of her because she works her butt off, and she's just a different breed. She works hard. She cares. Yeah. She's very genuine. She tells you, she fits in with us because she just tells you like
to know these people when you reference them. Like Lulu she's amazing, and clearly has a Dominican accent. But I also I've talked to her a bunch of times. I don't have any. I know, and I think, for example, somebody that has an accent, whether you have kind of Italian, maybe it's just a region of the country. I've talked to so many people and know so many people and have so many friends with all these different backgrounds that it never phases me. I'm not thrown by it at all. But yeah, there definitely are some people that feel, I guess, more comfortable when it sounds, but Lulu she's amazing. I mean, she's incredible. And
she's very passionate. She's very passionate about the training. And she's real good at it.
Everyone loves her.
But with that said, it's hard to find somebody who doesn't like Lulu. As a matter of fact, when she worked for me at that big dealer group, and she was manager for me, and I have customers today that still talk about Lulu, and that was like 13 years ago.
Was she doing training stuff for you back in those days?
I'm sorry. Like
was she doing training work for you back in those days?
No, she was a BDC manager.
So even better. I mean,
she ran the Southeast. Her and Shauna ran the Southeast stores.
And that's why there are a couple of ass kickers now for you. I mean, they know what they're doing. They know what to look for. They know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anthony and Shauna have been with me 21 years.
Anthony's another rock star.
Yeah.
So when you guys are kind of putting people through...
I told you, we're going to start promoting people.
When you guys are putting people through your training program to get them ready, is there a period of time that is on average that somebody's in training? Do any people come out faster because they move quicker, or do you put everybody through the same? They've got to know this is the structure. And
we'll do the same. Yeah, that was something I learned from my old boss, David Hull. It was when he hired a general manager, he made them go through sales training.
Smart, get everybody on the same page.
And if they didn't like it, by the way, he would say, and by the way, this is the BDC that you're going to be working with. That's non-negotiable, and the sales training is non-negotiable. That was my life. Yeah. That was my background. And everybody that works with me that was working with me back then, that currently still works. We still have a dozen or more people that work here that work
that's amazing.
With us.
That's amazing. So what's the average time period that somebody goes through training before they're ready, before you say, okay, they're good?
So it's a full week of sales training. We really focus in on all of our scripts, how we it's funny, like we train in a meet and greet or introduction, and if you don't train it, they're not going to use it.
Right.
And we break that down. We go over, there's so many objection handling, how to overcome objections, how to address an objection. One of the funny things about selling, Sean, and again, this could be a whole topic in itself, but I feel as if I've mastered sales training, and it's because it's all about relationship. And if you start off with a bad introduction, you're starting off the relationship bad. And then if you sound helpful, I always tell my salespeople, corny sells. Tough guy doesn't sell. You know, you ever meet that tough guy salesperson? I want to just run away from them when they come at me hardcore. And they think they're this big closer and all those other
I always refer to those people as the ones that they want to sell you something, and I don't want to be sold anything. I want you to help me buy something, because I like buying shit, but I hate it when you are like hardcore selling me on it, especially if I have to go into your.
We train on, the laws of persuasion. We train on the 5 yeses. A lot of this stuff I got from the guru, Lee D. Morinville, back in the day. But the 5 yeses, I do it like a comedy routine. I'll sit in front of a training class and I'll get them to agree with me 5 times. And as long as they're agreeing with me, I'm building rapport. The second a customer stops agreeing with me or objects, now it's my job to overcome that objection. There is a technique to it, and it's sad that people don't give it the credit that it deserves to be a good salesperson. And AI is going to take over, and people are going to buy stuff online without a salesperson. They can, and that will happen. However, there is still going to be a need for someone to interact with a customer during that process at some point in time, without upsetting them. I think a large majority, Sean, of dealers do a good job and try hard to do all this stuff. I don't want to make it sound like they're not. Their challenge is turnover, as we started. So just to state a couple of stats, right? Last year and the year before, turnover at dealerships is a historical low, 35%. And that's overall. That's techs, that's management, that's office help, salespeople, everybody. So 35% turnover means that you hire 100 people, at the end of the year, you lost 35 of them. So they don't have any numbers on sales people specifically, or NADA. I was looking it up. At least I haven't found any. But their estimation was that sales retention was just as high. It helped drive that number down to 35%. But in the past, that number was up around 46, 48% in the dealership. That means every year you're turning over half your staff.
Yeah. And I think even years past from that, it's been even worse, right? I mean,
with salespeople, it's more like 70%. Yeah. And with BDC, it's 80+%.
Okay, so what's that cost a business?
Yeah. So an hourly employee, it costs a business about $15,000 to replace that person annually, which is a little over $1,000 a month. That's recruiting, training, hiring, if you're doing it right. If you're not doing it right, you're turning people over faster. So it's costing you even more money. But a C-level tech, high-level management position can cost a company $50,000+. This is stats that I can, share some links with you on that I've been researching. But it costs money to turn over people. And if retail is high turnover, and call center specifically can be high turnover, then why is Strolid's average turnover rate under 40%? We're at like 35%. And we have been. And so part of my thought process is, why would a dealer want to continue? I mean, listen, I know they say that they're family owned and operated and they care about their employees, and I know they do. But why would you continue to churn through people like that? And I'm not saying everybody. That 70% turnover in salespeople, that takes the good and the bad. I mean, there might be some that are, have long-term tenured salespeople, been there a long time. But then there might be some that are 100% turnover every year, or more. Yep. So I think it screams that you need a company like Strolid. to dull the pain.
So
because like you said, Sean, we don't quit. We don't call in sick.
Yeah, which is nowadays, the quiet quitting thing. I mean, I've seen headlines about that for months now. People are quietly quitting. I'm like, what does that even mean? It means like you just don't even tell your employer, you just stop showing up. Is that what quiet quitting is? Like, it's right. You do that to a dealership who, is painstakingly trying to put together a staff that provides this great experience for the customers that come and buy really expensive things for them with steering wheels and tires and all that stuff. And you don't think through like the consequence of, well, what if you have the kind of people who are just going to like quit, not show up, not call, not... It's one thing if you stop going to McDonald's and because you hate working there and you're tired of people throwing fries at you or whatever. But and maybe this is a key for dealers.
By the way, there's a good, you brought up McDonald's. McDonald's, for every 100 people they hire, they replace 120 annually. So they're 120%.
So there is
turnover. So there are businesses worse than the car business.
I don't know if that makes me feel better.
I'm sure a lot of restaurants and businesses in the restaurant industry.
Oh yeah, I think food service probably does churn. I don't know. My guess would be is that if you're a really, really great, skilled, talented waiter, waitress, make big tips, working in the right part of the country kind of thing, there are restaurants that I've been to over the last several years where you I know that person, like you go there because they're so amazing. But I think in a lot of other food service, there's a lot of heavy turnover. But in a car business situation, when that starts happening, that's eroding your ability to be able to say, well, we really care about our customers and we're really going to take care of the customer, and the customer experience is the number one thing for us. The number one thing should be to make sure that you find the right people and you figure out how to retain people. As you're looking around, has it changed much over the years in terms of the reasons why turnover remains really high on the dealership side? Why people are like, you know what, screw this. I'm not going to do this.
Well, you just said it. If you look at it like a Highline dealership, they got some long-term salespeople. Why? They're making money. The Ford, Chevys, Toyotas, Hondas. When business gets back to normal, Sean, their grosses are going to drop, which affects how you pay a salesperson. And how many people want to work 40 or 50 hours plus a week? Have to sell 20 plus cars to make a good living when grosses are really bad. So that hasn't really come back completely yet. I mean, for the salespeople and the owners and GMs of the dealerships, I hope it doesn't come back like it was, because it was really bad. I mean, mini deals are $100. So you sell 20 cars, you make $2,000. Maybe they give you an extra $2,000 bonus because you get 20 cars or something, but and you're working 50 hours a week delivering cars, taking a pound in day out. Like, if you're making money, you'll deal with
working
that.
Weekends.
Yeah. I mean, back when I started selling cars, Sean, we made a lot of money, but I mean, it wasn't very customer friendly. Yeah. Invoices weren't all everywhere. You couldn't tell what a dealer owned the car for, and dealers weren't as crazy discounting cars. I mean, I talked to a buddy of mine who runs a Nissan store in Atlanta just yesterday, and he was talking to a friend of his that runs a Nissan store up in South Carolina, and he's saying, I still haven't started discounting new cars. And he's like, well, make sure your customers aren't shopping in Atlanta, because everybody's already $1,500 off of MSRP, $2,000 off already again.
Yeah. Do you think there's an adjacent issue with the way that dealers typically hire? And when I say typically, I mean over the last, couple decades, that the way that they've always done that, and they haven't fundamentally changed that enough, that the adjacent issue is we're still hiring. Dealers are still hiring too many people that hate accountability, and they hate like the words like, you got to be reliable. I need to be able to rely on you. You will show up. You won't quit. You'll follow our training. You'll do, you'll use the tools that we invest in to make your job more efficient. And do you think that unfortunately dealers still attract too many people that I don't want to be labeled as I have to be reliable, I have to be accountable, I have to be, responsible. And so when those things start to come down on, hey, you got to do these things to do this, and then you got these people who are like, no way, I don't, and then I'm going to move on to the next dealership who doesn't even really care what I do.
Right. Yeah, so that's why process is so important, Sean. And it has to make sense. You don't want to just put a customer or your employee through a process just because it sounds like a good idea. Like, if we used to talk about it all years ago. If a customer comes in, they only got 15 minutes. Do you really need to do a walk around presentation and take them on a test drive? Maybe they don't. Maybe they have more than 15 minutes, and that's just their way of getting, the information they want. It's funny. I just told you, dealers are not discounting cars or over MSRP, and then they don't want to tell the customer until they get to the showroom. Well, when are you going to tell them? When they get to the showroom? So now you want them hitting the ceiling when they get into the showroom? Like, What are we hiding? You have to give to get. That's one of the laws of persuasion. It's reciprocity. And if a customer asks for a price, we need to give them a price, even if it is $2,000 over sticker. Let them react to that. Great salespeople, they're looking for the reaction. They're not looking to pull the wool over someone's eyes. The reaction tells you everything. Yeah, I love the reaction because now I can sell you.
Yeah,
potentially. I can justify the price, maybe, or maybe we can save you $500 more or whatever, or have you shopped around? Have I shopped around? If I'm a dealer today, if I'm going 2, 3, 5,000 over MSRP, I am definitely shopping my competitors to see if they're doing the same thing. If you're allowing a general manager or a general sales manager, for that matter, to price your cars $5,000 over just because they want to pad their paycheck, you're going to lose customers.
Yeah.
And they may never come back.
Yeah, as we there's a lot of really great points in this episode. One of the things on the turnover topic that I just keep spinning back through my mind is, and I've thought this about your business many times, but a dealership today doesn't have to have the same number of salespeople standing around waiting for the next up, right? Especially when companies like yours exist. I mean, Strolid is like, you want to cut down on your turnover? Hire us to do all these heavy lift communication. We'll make your customer happy by making sure that they're not like, hey, nobody picked up the phone, 100%. Nobody responded through text or whatever, and have your best people who can take that deal and bring it to completion, totally making the customer happy with, hey, I know you talked to our sales team, and I'm the person you're going to work with, and then they finish the deal. But what a great way to prevent high turnover is, all of those people that are just going to quietly quit on you or call in sick or whatever, or really it's a stretch for them to have a job that they have to come in because they can't afford the childcare or whatever. All the things that you've been accommodating over the last now several years positions your business to be the perfect way to actually help extend the cut down of turnover even to dealers by saying, well, this is one of the ways we're a really reliable service. And it's still, even for a dealer who would say, yeah, but I'm bringing in a new cost to use that. Yeah, but the trade-off is probably you're saving more in the long run because of things you just talked about. The ongoing cost of turnover, month over month, year over year, especially if your percentage is high, take that plus the salespeople that you don't need standing around that don't really do much anyway, and you have more than enough in your budget to actually completely rebuild the way you service your customers, to include using Strolid. I mean, isn't that one of the things that you in the last probably 2 or 3 years have, like, the light is so clearly like, if you were a dealer again, would you say, oh yeah, I need to have a Strolid in place and I need to have my very best soldiers on the front line of customer sales experience, that whole deal? Isn't that the best way to do it?
Yeah, what I would do if I was back in the dealership, I actually thought about this recently, is I would look at how much time does a salesperson actually spend in the 12 hours that they're in a dealership actually working. Which always made me laugh, and cut that down to maybe 7-8 hours a day, and actually make them work for 7 or 8 hours. But let them go home after 8 hours instead of making them work 12. That's archaic. It's barbaric. It needs to change. I'm sure a lot of dealers have already changed that. They have to, I would imagine. Who the heck? Like when I was a kid, I was selling 12 cars a month, but I was making a lot of money, like averaging $8,000 to $1,000 per car. So figuring out the math, they don't make that kind of money anymore. They did over the last year. Yeah. That's going away. I mean, unless you work for BMW, Mercedes-Benz, whatever, they don't need to discount their cars. They get, Ferrari, whatever. But I mean, you get my point. It's like there are all kinds of different dealers out there. I've been exposed to all of them. I've been exposed to different markets, different regions, different general managers, how people do it. There really is no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's really no standardization of how to run a dealership.
Mm-hmm.
There's no outline. Or as a matter of fact, actually there is one, but it hasn't changed since like the 40s.
Yeah.
The guys who try to change it, one of the problems guys that try to change their business in the car business is their seasoned veteran car guys quit. And they're like, I'm going to go down the street where they actually, handle things the way I've been brought up. It's like, so part of the challenge there is what we talked about earlier. Do you want the experience, the car background, or do you want somebody that's just really good at customer service? And I think if I was to go back to a dealership, I would go towards the customer service side and train them my way. Make them work 8 hours a day, pay them a good amount of money, give them growth opportunities to do more. I always tell managers, like, you want to be a manager, just expect now I'm going to put more pressure on you as, mm-hmm. the CEO of Strolid, or, when I worked at the dealer group. The far higher up you go, you get paid more, yes, because there's more pressure and there's more responsibility for you to perform
mm-hmm.
for your people.
Yeah.
So there's a reason you get paid more. And some people think, oh, I made it. I'm a GSM now, making, a couple $100,000 a year, and now I don't have to do any work. Bullshit. Your job just got harder if you're actually any good. My old boss was like, I would walk at the car dealerships and I'd be like, so how are you guys underperforming so poorly? And the GSM would say, I have the worst people. They're so weak. and I didn't even giggle. I would look them straight in the eye and be like, listen, do yourself a favor. And if David ever asks you that question, do not blame your people. Because he's going to look you right in the eye and say, that's your fault.
Yeah. Just hold up a mirror. Yeah.
No, but think about how powerful that is. Yeah. That's your fault. Why do I take so much pride in the people that I've had here so long? Because that's mm-hmm. my fault.
It's your responsibility.
No, but they're here for a reason. Not just me. They love each other too. But they're here because we're doing some things right.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't think they're just zombies, right? Just following along.
Not even thinking about it. Oh, man. We could go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was a different conversation than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more on like real structure and stuff, but I'm glad we're talking about it at this level, because I think real car guys and dealers will really get it. So I'll say it like this, Sean. Running any business, car business, Strolid, isn't easy, but and it's a cliche. People say it's all about your people. It is, but I think it's also about you as a leader setting clear expectations for your people. And as long as they're like if I ask somebody to do something, Sean, and they do it exactly the way I wanted to, and they just happen to be having a bad month and not selling anything, I can't blame them. They're doing everything that we asked. You know, I tell Josh this when we get a complaint from a dealer. I'm like, Josh, are we answering the calls? Are we answering the leads? Are we sending the texts? Are we doing the follow-up? If the answer to all that is yes, there's other variables. Like maybe the $5,000 over MSRP isn't the right way to go. Or maybe the fact that you're getting 10,000 visits to your website and 8,000 were paid, and there's like a 90% bounce rate on that paid search, like it could be a whole bunch of things.
A lot of variables.
All I can control are the expectations of what I asked from Strolid, that's being done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I this episode for me was kind of like, this is had a little bit more of an organic. There's some, there's definitely some points in this that I think that we just don't talk about them enough. We can start to take them for granted a little bit, but I think we'll come back around this. This is the podcast that's set up for people who are trying to figure out, how do we get better in sales process? How do we understand the finer points of, what makes a BDC work if we're trying to put it inside of our dealership? But more importantly, like, take it out of your dealership and figure out how that actually helps in all of this. So when we have these episodes that kind of go in directions where it's like, we're kind of in this place, and then we all of a sudden find this other layer like we did today around turnover and how that affects the cost at your dealership. Those are things that I think are way too easy to take for granted. Like, of course, I know it's going to cost me money when I have a high turnover rate, but do you really pay attention to it? Do you take that into meetings with your management team, with your leadership team? And do you challenge yourself to, how do we get better? You can't just settle for, well, it's been this way forever, because the car business doesn't really have a good excuse for why it hasn't done better at trimming that turnover rate down over decades. The only reason why that it flipped in the last 3 years is because of COVID. That's the reason why those percentages are so off in the last couple of years. So I think it's great to talk about these things, because I think the people who are truly interested in this type of information, where else are you going to have a resource like this from people, especially like yourself, that have decades of experience doing these very things. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say is, one thing that drives me is when someone tells me it is the way it is. I don't know what it is inside me, but when I hear that, I just want to change it and prove them wrong.
Yeah, that's good though.
Yeah, because you will hear that. You will hear guys say, you don't understand. You don't understand the car. It's like, have you ever really taken a look at your business? Have you talked to your customers? Have you talked to your employees? Like, really talk to them and really listen to what they're saying. Sure, I always say, when you ask for feedback, expect a lot of it to be excuses and complaints. But you have to be able to sift through all those excuses and see if there's any real problems there that you can, try and make their life better, make their life easier. And I'm blessed. That place runs itself now. Well, doesn't run itself. It runs without me, which is a huge relief for me.
It allows you to improve that business and help dealers on a level that previously you couldn't do because you had to be so 100%. Involved. And I think that says a lot about how a business starts from one place, and 5, 6, 7 years later, you finally get to these places where you can now open it up and be even a greater service to, the customer that is your target. And I think that's huge. So, and I think that's a great place. I think we found another place to park an episode. So to the audience, say, like we always say regarding this episode and really all of our episodes, if you like it, if you love it, or none of the above, we'd still love to hear from you. Dealer Insights, this podcast gets better with comments and questions and feedback and recommendations from you, people who are watching and listening. So drop those in the comments section, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. You can also send comments to info@strolid.com. Strolid is spelled STROLID. info@strolid.com. Until next time, stay strong and solid, and you'll never miss.